Happy Halloween! Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special Wednesday afternoon show. It's a matinee day here in New York. Who or what are you celebrating today? I'm celebrating Halloween. Let me take the special effects off. So, nothing's wrong with your screen. I just love this time of year. Let me tell you a little bit about my childhood. I grew up, some of you know this, in Conway, South Carolina. And I guess my love of celebrating, as you all know, Richard Skipper celebrates, all began with my grandmother, Skipper. She celebrated each and every holiday to the hilt. And Halloween was one of those special holidays. My grandmother decorated the house with witches and goblins and skeletons and everything. And on Halloween, my grandmother would be sitting with this huge metal bowl full of all kinds of candies. And all the kids, grandkids, and kids from the neighborhood would all come up to her front door and just reach in and grab as much candy as possible. I remember my sister and my brothers all going out on Halloween, and we didn't have a lot of money, but my mother would always come home with those plastic Halloween masks, those masks that I always hated, with the little plastic rubber band in the back that always squeezed my back of my head and everything. But I love Halloween. And as time has gone on, Halloween has become almost as big as Christmas in terms of the way that people decorate their homes. Here in Rockland County, where I live, as I ride around at night, all the houses in my neighborhood are all decorated just as much as they decorate for Christmas. And stores start setting up as early as late August now. And I know that that frustrates a lot of people. But in this world of commerce, it's important that a lot of stores start prepping as early as possible. But I have a very special guest waiting in the wings. I'm going to bring him on right now. And that's my dear friend, Charles Rosenay, who's been on the show before. And I'm thrilled that he is back. The last time that he was here, we celebrated the Beatles. But today we're going to celebrate the world of horror and spooks and everything. Charles has often said that he believes that his life began in 1964 when the Beatles appeared on the Ed Sullivan Show. But I believe that his life really began earlier than that, when he grew up watching horror movies on black and white television. And it all began for me as well. But he lives, eats, and breathes the world of the paranormal. But who's to say that that is paranormal? Maybe it's all normal, and the rest of the world, if you're paying attention to what's going on in Washington, D.C. right now, to me, that's paranormal. So, Charles, welcome to the show.
Well, it's certainly not normal. Thank you. Thank you for having me back, right? Shifting gears from the Beatles to the monster stuff, which is that that's my childhood. I like you, I loved Halloween from an earliest age, loved trick-or-treating, and got frustrated when I got a little older and I felt I might have been too old to trick-or-treat, but I was always short. So I throw on that costume and the mask, and you couldn't tell that I was, already a teen. I was still trick-or-treating. And then I couldn't wait when I finally had a few kids there of my own. You better believe I was trick-or-treating with them.
Charles, where did you, we talked about this before, but you grew up where?
I grew up in the Bronx. Talk about scary monster stuff, right?
I grew up in South Carolina. I grew up in a very rural area, and Halloween was a big thing in the South. And I know that, we are about to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the New York City Halloween parade. And you haven't reached your 50th birthday yet. Did you go to the Halloween parade in New York? Or
No, years later, it was a not miss for a bunch of years. But growing up in the Bronx, I was 10 when I came to Connecticut, so we didn't go. But what I did is I lived in one of those huge apartment buildings, and so trick or treating was going doorbell to doorbell in one building, and you would fill up on the candy. I never have to leave the block to do that. When we moved to Connecticut, it was a lot more spread out. So certain homes you didn't have a walkway, you didn't have a path, you didn't have a sidewalk to get to. So we would travel to the neighborhoods we knew. There were neighborhoods we knew were givers and would have the unlimited Reese's or the best of the candies, the Snickers, and we'd make it a pilgrimage every year to the same places. But Halloween, the whole holiday and the monsters and all that, it's funny because you said that, the Beatles, 1964, first memory and impacted my life. But watching monster movies with mom, in that black and white TV that only got probably 3 channels. But you know what? We read the Bible, we read the TV guide, and we had
yes.
that was the Bible in those days. And we circled, the monster movies that were on. And we'd have to, figure out which channel. See, we were lucky. We had those rabbit ears. So we wouldn't just get CBS, NBC, and ABC. We'd also get a few of those independent channels. And those are the ones who ran the monster movies. So I was in my joy when we had like Chiller Theater or Creature Features or any of those. Every week I'd be watching whatever horror movie came on.
Do you remember the first movie that truly scared you and really stuck with you?
All right, so that's a 2-part question. And I remember because I do a lot of book appearances at libraries. And I literally start off by telling the story of how my parents wanted me to love the same things they did, of course. So it was, the early rock and roll and Motown, listening to AM radio. But, mom got it in her head that she wanted me to love the monster movies as much as she did. And she sat me down and she turned off all the lights. And Richard, I was never in bed before midnight. I was one of those, only child who stayed up till my parents stayed up, and then I went to bed. She put on Bride of Frankenstein. And in 1 minute, whether it was the first scene or the first note of the music, I was in bed with the blanket over my head. Now, this was the $1 Million movie in New York. And if I'm not mistaken, it was on Channel 9, but the $1 Million movie had the same showing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, the same every night. So it was usually Casablanca, Gone with the Wind, something. It had Bride of Frankenstein. Second night, she was a little smarter. She left the lights on. She put the blankets over us. She gave me more milk and Jiffy Pop. Remember Jiffy Pop?
Oh my God, of course.
So she was smart. So I did watch the movie like this. I made it through the movie. By the third night, the Wednesday, I watched it like this. I was watching it and enjoying it, but not admitting how much I was enjoying it. Thursday, I was asking, when is it going to be on? I was reciting the lines back. And by Friday, that was it. I was hooked. Being a kid that age, I thought that movie was going to be on the rest of my life at that time. I didn't understand the concept of programming. So yeah, that was the first one that scared me. But the one that gave me nightmares, and this is a surprise when I mention it, years later, it was a home invasion film called Wait Until Dark with Audrey Hepburn,
yes,
Alan Arkin playing against type as a bad guy. And that was, I don't know what happened, but I went home, went to bed, and it was one of those like COVID virus flu nights where you don't know if you're awake, you don't know if you're asleep, but people were breaking into the house all night. They were coming through the windows. That movie gave me nightmares. And it's not a scary movie per se. When you think of
suspense,
The Exorcist and Psycho, that's the one that scared me. The whole concept of, home invasion really, ooh.
Well, I'll tell you a story. When I was 15 years old, we lived out in the country and we lived next to a church, and there was a cemetery right next to the church.
Mm-hmm.
So my parents, I was doing a show with our local theater company, and my parents were going away for the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
They allowed me to stay, and this, of course, was in the 70s, and it was a different world, folks. but my parents allowed me to stay home for the weekend because I was in rehearsals. And so the movie The Tingler with Vincent Price was on TV. And so I am home watching the movie. And then we had this big picture window in our living room.
Yeah.
And I look out the window and I see this light dancing through the cemetery. And my instinct was to run through the house and turn all the lights out. So I ran through the house, turned all the lights out, and a few minutes later, I saw this dancing light again in the cemetery. And and my heart was racing so fast, I, at 15, thought I was going to have a heart attack.
Oh my gosh.
And I've never felt such suspense in my life. And if you know the story of the Tingler, it's all about suspense and not being able to scream. And that's what I was feeling as I was watching this movie. And then I realized that every time a car was passing the cemetery, it was the reflection of the headlights bouncing off of the tombstones. And wow. I have never felt such fear in my life of that moment. So, but
let's talk about the Tingler for one more second.
Yes.
Do you know about its theatrical history?
Yes. Do you want to talk about that?
We have to, because the guy William Castle, who made that film, was really a marketing genius, and he did a movie and he would have a ghost, a fake little skeleton attached to the back of the screen, and when one scene came, the ghost would be on a wire and fly through the people in the audience. This was genius. But for the Tingler, which I think was the most brilliant concept, at one point when the Tingler is finally seen in the movie, the seats in the theater were wired to either give a little buzz or to give a touch behind the leg, something like that in all the seats. And I don't know how they could have done that in every theater it played. It was probably just in the world premieres in LA or New York. But to rig the seats for you to get an actual thing happen to you while you're seeing that Tingler, wow, that's genius. So when you mentioned that movie, I had to, give the theatrical lore behind it.
Well, Charles, I have to tell you, two experiences that I've had in my lifetime that I absolutely are two of my favorite memories. When I was in high school, I worked in an amusement park, and there was a haunted house in the amusement park. And people could walk through the haunted house. And I actually worked in the haunted house. So I could say that I actually haunted houses. Yes. I worked in the haunted house, and it was so much fun to scare people. And then several years ago, Madison Square Garden, they had what was called Madison Scare Garden.
Yes.
And I worked there, and I did that for 3 years.
I attended.
Oh, you did?
I did. I went there 1 year.
I will never forget this, and I have an autographed picture from Alice Cooper. Were you there when Alice Cooper was there?
No, I was not there that night, but he sponsored the event. He sponsored
the event, and Alice Cooper was coming through, and I played this demented clown, and I jumped out, and I scared the hell out of him, and he screamed so loud. He said he had never been so scared in his life, and he said he had to meet me afterwards. And so I scared Alice Cooper.
Wow, what a memory. I owned a haunted attraction in Connecticut for about 15 years, sold it before COVID because I didn't think we'd be able to open up. And then when my non-compete ended, now I run something called the Haunted Trolley, which I didn't even give you the link to it. Oh, look at you. You are
ready.
That is impressive. And it's the last 2 weekends coming up in October. And I sort of hosted as the conductor, but I'm going to step back the last 2 weeks. We have an acting troupe doing a whole murder mystery on board, a la Murder on the Orient Express, Murder on the Shoreline Express in East Haven, Connecticut. And people are loving it. And I love that whole, being the one who used to get scared as a kid going to haunted attractions to now being on the other side. I've done the clown, I've done the zombie, I've done the vampire. Absolutely love scaring people. It's such a thrill. And both, you get, the right reaction. There's nothing like people say, oh, stand-up comedian gets the best laughs. You know, a rock and roll singer, when the crowd goes wild. I'll tell you, if I have a group of 6 and they're on the floor, or they back up and pee their pants, that's my joy.
Well, with Alice Cooper, he said that I made him piss in his pants. Those were his exact words, and I said that was the greatest compliment that anyone could ever pay me. I've got a couple of links that I'm going to bring up, and as I bring up these links, I want to talk about these other events that you're doing. But
Yes.
before we do this, I want to talk about your book, because
Yeah.
you have a book, the book of Top 10 Horror List. And I've got this photograph of you with this, because, and this book is so incredible. I mean, anyone who loves horror movies, you have put this together. And I love this concept that you came up with of getting all these people to come in and talk about their favorite horror movies.
Yeah.
And, tell me how this book came about in the first place.
Well, it came about because I was doing this little online column, which nobody was ever reading, called National Horror Happenings. And I would, review a horror movie. I'd preview. Maybe if I got lucky, I would do an interview with a star. But anything horror related, once a day, I'd throw it on there. If it got 5 hits, 10 hits, when I was really. And one time I did a top 10 list from a celebrity, and it went from literally 5 views to over 1,000. I'm like, what? And it was probably at the time when David Letterman was doing top 10 lists. So top 10 lists are always hot. I thought, this is good. I'm going to try to do this once a week, once a month, whatever. And before I knew it, I had about 70 lists that I'd forgotten about. And then when COVID hit, I'm home, I'm isolating, I'm watching monster movies with the kids. I'm trying to think of things to do, because all the things I normally do, I can't do. Well, I decided, if I have these 70 lists, I just need 30 more. I'll put out a book. I'll put out a book, right? But in those few weeks, everyone I contacted was also home isolating with nothing to do. So I was having rock stars and athletes and celebrities saying, sure, when do you need it? I go, I don't know, within a few weeks. I'll have a few tomorrow. They loved having it. It was not an assignment. It wasn't homework. It was, yes, something to do here. And when I hit the 100, I went to publishers. Bear Manor Media loved the idea of this. They love pop culture.
I love Bear Manor Media, one of the best book publishing companies out there.
So they were great, and they put it out and, got me going. I'm on this kick now. I'm trying to put out a book a year, but what it's led to, which I absolutely love, is being able to go to all these conventions and libraries, talk like I love to talk about, my history, how I got into it, and then read a chapter or 2 from the book, and then sit myself down and plop on the tuchus and hope that I can sign a few for the people. And it's been working out very, very fun. And you mentioned, the book of top 10 horror lists, and I was just so honored to get some of the people who are in there, William Shatner and he rest his soul, Ed Asner. It's like a who's who in celebrity pop culture. People like you and me, we know every person who's in there. For the people who might not know, the unknown comedian from the Gong Show, all they do is, right? So they read his bio, which I wrote. They see the picture, and then it's, oh, of course I know who that is. And then they get more of a kick out of reading his list.
Well, and do you find that you are learning a lot about who they are based on the list they send you?
Yes. Mickey Dolenz from the Monkees, who I'm dear friends with, and I love the guy. And always, I know him from music. Anytime we've ever spoke music, he gives me this list, and it's got all these like 1950s sci-fi classics on there. And good man. Pete Best, the Beatles drummer, go figure that he not only loved the classics, but some of the current, the slasher type horror movies too. So yeah, I learned, not only did I learn a lot from these people, but some of them came up with these films that, shame on me, I never either saw or heard of in a few cases. We do a very comprehensive index in the back of every film that's listed and every horror theme that's referred to. But I had to catch up when the book came out. I then went back and had to watch some films that I thought, whoa, yeah, I can see why they were listed in the book.
Do you give them any guidelines, or do you just give them free reign to do whatever they want to with their list?
So, oh, good question. So, for the current book that I put out, True Ghost Stories of Connecticut, that I definitely gave them guidelines for. They had certain criteria. For the top 10 list books that I do, and I did a Beatles one, as you know, what I said was, sure, you can do your top 10 favorite Beatles songs. You can do your top 10 favorite horror movies. Those are what most people are doing. But if you want to take it a step further and you can come up and think beyond the box and come up with something else, you have full reign to do that. Yeah, I gave them freedom to decide. And some did that. Some, did favorite music themes in horror films. Some did like the best scares from a scream queen. They were really clever in their topics, but most were favorite horror movies or horror actors or favorite horror memories. The one I love bringing up is Boris Karloff's daughter, Sarah Karloff. She's the sweetest human on the planet. And she goes, Charles, I want to give you a list in your book, but I hate horror movies. I don't know. She goes, I never used to watch my dad's movies even. And I go, all right, I understand. She goes, no, leave it with me. She came up with a list of top 10 things that scare her. And number 10 was having to do this list.
I love that.
Right?
I want to ask you, you were born in the Bronx,
yeah.
but you now live in Connecticut.
Yes.
You consider yourself a true Connecticut person. You live there. And you have all these events that happen in Connecticut.
Yes.
You've got these True Ghost Stories of Connecticut.
Yeah.
How did that all begin in terms of the research and the time and the energy that have gone into covering the entire state with all of these amazing stories that you tell?
That's a great question. I always consider myself that horror kid who built the monster magazines, who still is silly and plays with the dolls. I still love this stuff, and I still love seeing the movies. But a few years back, pre-COVID, I became friends with people who are in the paranormal world, and it was something that I wasn't so familiar with. Now, mind you, I had an experience in college, which I'd forgotten about. A real one of those, wow! And I'd seen a ghost, and you don't mention it to people because they think you're crazy. Not so much anymore. Now you say it and people, oh yeah, well I did too. I have one that lives in the attic. People, it's more commonplace because we're not afraid that we're going to be institutionalized for seeing things, in the closet. But having said that, I started doing the paranormal conventions in Connecticut, which then begat the paranormal convention in Salem, Massachusetts, which I'm doing.
Which is coming up in November.
Yeah, very excited about that. Psychic Fair Fests I do. But when I did the first convention, here I was, a newbie to this paranormal world. And all these people are there, and they're people who've been doing this 30, 40, 50, their whole lives. They've been exploring the supernatural. And I knew there were all these books out everywhere you go. You'll see Haunted South Carolina. You'll see Haunted Detroit. There's these books everywhere, and they're great, and they serve a purpose. But what there wasn't was what happened to the people who live or are alive now and visited this penitentiary or visited this old school that's haunted. I wanted to know their stories. I wanted to compile a book. And I mentioned, you asked, did I give them any guidelines? Here, there were two guidelines, two criteria. One, that it had something to do with Connecticut. And two, that it was true. I didn't want somebody embellishing it. Richard, I didn't want them fruiting it up, flowering it, making sure it's scarier than it's supposed to be. I wanted it as it happened. And I got the most amazing stories of asylums, of hospitals, of homes, of schools, of opera houses. And each one of the stories is better than the one before. It's cemeteries. And half of it are places that, if you live in Connecticut, this is, Dudleytown, Fairfield. These are places that are known to be scary places. But then it was people giving us some places that, really? No, I never heard that place was haunted. Thank you for sharing that. And my story is about the Pink Lady of New Haven, which is the one that I'd forgotten about. since college. It was just, I don't know if it was a repressed, forgotten memory, but when I sat down to do the book. So now I do a lot of libraries, and that's a big hot topic every October. So this whole month, every weekday, I'm in a different library with the True Ghost Stories of Connecticut.
How did I get you today?
This was perfect timing because it's daytime. I
Yes.
do those at 7:00 at night. No, this is ideal.
Are
And
you there tonight?
tonight I'm in Deep River, Connecticut. I've never been in the town before. Last night I was in Prospect, Connecticut. Every night a different library. And the people flock. And the first thing I ask is, raise a hand. How many people believe in ghosts? Richard, would you believe if I told you every hand goes up? And then I say, and how many of you had a paranormal experience? And again, every hand goes up. And I know already my audience is going to be in the palm of my hand, because now I'm talking not to people who are like I used to be, a skeptic or a non-believer, but they're already, they're already part of the paranormal universe because they've had experiences and they want to hear someone else's. So that's now becomes part of my program, is them telling their stories to me and asking questions. And I love it. I'm by no means am I a paranormal expert. I don't think there's such a thing, but I have insight.
I mean, obviously, this has become your life's work now. I mean, do you find that now, I think everyone's goal is to be the go-to person on any topic or subject.
Yeah.
And to get to that point, to me, is the true level of success. So obviously you, in my opinion, are the go-to person. Are people reaching out to you now, or do you find that you're still reaching out to people to book yourself?
Yeah. So, for many years, I was the Beatles go-to. If NBC needed to speak to, how do we get in touch with someone who was at Shea Stadium? No problem. I'll get you a phone number like that.
I have to tell you, by the way, I'm going to change the subject for just a brief moment.
Yeah.
Because the Beatles came up this morning on The View.
Oh.
Yes, because Dolly Parton was on The View this morning.
Right.
About her new album.
And Paul McCartney contributed to it. Yeah.
And Ringo Starr.
Oh, and Ringo did too, right.
They recorded Let It Be.
Mm.
And who else is on that track?
No, who else?
Peter Frampton.
Whoa.
Yes. So Can you imagine? They were all in the studio together.
I love it. Oh, wow. Dolly.
So I can't wait. And that's coming out on November 17th. So just that I put that out there, since you bring them up. So you were mentioning that you were the go-to person for the Beatles.
For media for the longest time. And now what happens is people will call and say, hi, I know you do the paranormal conventions and you do, all these paranormal investigations. I have a scenario in my home. It's getting to be more, I didn't mind it at first, but now it's getting to be touching and scratching and a lot of, contact. And once it reaches that point, I'm not the person, but then I call, who you're going to call. I call, my colleagues who are experts at this, not experts in the paranormal, experts in helping solve the scenarios. And they'll go and they'll do the blessings and they'll do the salt and they'll do everything they need to hopefully either banish whatever that is that's being mischievous, or putting it back to when it was, not in contact. Some people, it's really funny. We had a scenario where there was this gal in Stratford, and she said, and I don't know if she was all there, forgive me, but it came to the point where she said she was being raped by a poltergeist, that it had gotten beyond it became sexual, and we stopped it. We found there was an object in her shed that was from it was thrown out of a church, and it was cursed. We removed it. We did the blessings, and she called back and told us, is there a way we could bring back? She missed her spirit.
Wow. Well, Charles, I had mentioned earlier, the Halloween parade in Greenwich Village. And last year, believe it or not, for the first time, I went to the Halloween parade. And it was because of this gentleman here who invited us to come. Bradford, just to let you know, you're unmuted, so unmute yourself. And this is the man behind the parade.
Wow.
So, yes. So
I'm the man behind the woman.
Behind the mask,
But
behind,
no,
behind
at least.
everything.
But
Bradford, meet
thank
Charles.
you, gentlemen. Nice to
Yes.
meet you, Charles. That was a
Same
funny
here.
story you just told.
So, Bradford, I want to ask you, how did you get involved with the Halloween parade in Greenwich Village?
Oh wow. I have been involved in the parade for, I would say, maybe 3-ish decades. So I think I originally got involved. I was living on McDougal Street, and I was involved in some community groups. I was the president of the Bleecker Area Merchant Resident Association, and I was on the the president of the community council, which is the police department's sort of civilian board by neighborhood. So the parade, I was always supportive of the parade in those capacities with those different organizations. We make a little contribution. The feeling in the neighborhood was that the parade, especially for the businesses, brought in this huge amount of revenue, and really made Greenwich Village a focus of Halloween for the world. So it was as a merchant resident association, it was something I supported, and there was the safety overlay because with the police department, because you had even then it's grown since then, but I think even then we had hundreds of thousands of spectators and maybe upwards of 50 to 100,000 participants. I think now we're up to about 2 million in-person spectators, not including televised spectators, and probably about 150, 160,000 participants in a typical Halloween. And that fluctuates based on whether it's a weekend, what the weather's like. It's always on Halloween, rain or shine. And the only exception, I think, was the hurricane. We weren't able to pull it off after that. So one year that I'm aware of, but others might know if there was another year we missed it for any reason. But anyway, so to go back, it was something that was very beneficial to the community. It was something that we supported. And then there was a little controversy with the parade that caused there was a usually the parade is an incredibly peaceful event for how many people it is, but there was a minor incident with that had caused sort of a political uproar at the time, and in order to we put together a petition to sort of support the parade and say how important it was to the neighborhood, to make sure, because what had happened is, because of sort of any controversy was causing sponsors to pull out, and if you don't have sponsors, you can't pay for your insurance. Wow. So the parade was very vulnerable that year, and we managed to sort of turn the worm and remind people how much the parade was appreciated, and that's since then. So I became more involved with the board of the parade, and since then have had many opportunities to help when there were crises, or be involved in helping to organize the parade, or bring in other organizations to participate with the parade. So that's sort of my personal history and trajectory with the parade.
How soon do you start prepping for the parade?
I like to say that and this is Brad personally, I
Mhm.
like to say that I take on um, the 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 minimum responsibility that I can in order to have the amount of power and influence that I do. So I personally don't do no, I'm kidding. I don't have much power and influence, but I don't also have virtually no responsibility. I'm more I'm the in terms of jobs that I take on for the parade, like,
Mhm.
we're a team, we're all friends, and Gene Fleming, um, the executive producer for the last 43 years, is the star of the show in terms of being the creative producer of the parade. Um, my role, when I have a role, tends to be sort of government affairs troubleshooting. I'm the government affairs director, to the extent that I take on any responsibilities, because that's my field. I'm a lawyer and a government affairs professional. So I tend to limit the stuff that I actually have to do to get the parade to happen. More, if problems come up, I address them, and then with the uh, when there are certain things that I like to do. So on the day of the parade, like if I see somebody wearing a really incredible costume that's very elaborate that they spent the last 6 months putting together, I'll put that person on TV. If I see a group
Now
costume
I
that,
know what I need to do.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I will make sure I will.
Oh,
So,
thank
so
you.
there are things. That's what I say. Like I don't have any like responsibilities that I have to, like. The parade would go off perfectly well without me, but I sometimes there's that opportunity where I can help and support the parade, so they keep me around.
Well,
But
before you
the
came on, Charles and I were talking about, our love of the holiday and everything.
mm,
Was this always for yourself, a favorite holiday or anything before you got involved? And also, did you go to the parade for years before getting involved, or?
yeah, I mean, again, I was this person that was sort of active in my community in Greenwich Village. So the the parade was sort of one of the highlights of our calendar for our community. So and I think, I mean, I know I'm usually um lazy about getting um putting any kind of costume on, because we're like, when you're there at the parade to occasionally help, or you have, like, I like to put my people on TV, or that I find, that I discover, I'll, but or doing the other government affairs things that come up during the parade. It's confusing. Like, if I have to talk to the chief of police about postings, or the size of a different, an area or something like that, it would it's hard for them to take you seriously if you're, like, dressed as a llama. So 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 typically I just wear, like, a t-shirt and a credential,
Right.
and so that they know I'm with the parade, and not like, just somebody partying there.
I would be a
um
llama. I would go llama all the way.
right. So i I think, the like, in the past, I remember, like, way back, I used to dress up for the parade and put some thought into costumes, and try to, it's just like, the parade is this expression of creativity, um that I can't think of any comparable event, like you talk about Burning Man or different things like that. um you know this is something where everyone who is opting to be a part of it is putting all this creative thought and energy into coming up with that idea, whatever they're going to be. Um, and then you have all the organizations that are doing, um, very um, amazing puppetry displays, and all the different thematic exhibits and floats and different things that people do. It's really this amazing. It's basic like all the like so many creative folks in New York City, hundreds of thousands of them, are putting in all this thought and effort into what they want to show their fellow New Yorkers. So yeah, I did it. I used to do it. I thought it was amazing. I thought this this creative coming together was a wonderful thing. Occasionally I do a costume, I and either be in the parade or watching the parade in costume. I remember I can't remember exactly how I represented it, but I did remember when Tom Cruise jumped on the couch.
Yes.
I was Tom Cruise with a couch to jump on. But and I've done a few others over the years. I can't remember, but you're up against, like, I mean, I've seen a group of people do like how many, I guess there's 15, 16, so it's 16 people. So each one dressed as a ball from a billiard ball, and then one dressed as the cue ball, and then they'd go into formation in a little triangle, and the cue ball would run at them really fast and then and then they'd all run around crazy. I mean, there's one group that does the Monty Python scene in Holy Grail where they have the coconuts, and
Yes.
so there's one group that does that entire scene, like all the guys with the coconuts and the armor and the like, because they have all these big packs and everything on them because they're the horses and the knights at the same time, kind of, so there's
and it's amazing. I mean, that they do this for the one night.
Right.
It doesn't cover like 3 or 4 nights.
Right.
I want to ask you, Charles. I mean, I know they like the Paracon that's coming up in Salem.
Yes.
That's happening, if I'm not mistaken, in November.
November 11th and 12th, because in Salem you can't get near anything during Halloween. So
that's what I was going to ask you. Have you ever been in Salem for Halloween? And years ago, I mean, I've always had this dream to be in Salem on Halloween. I can only imagine what that's like.
It's special. When I do the Beatle tours to Liverpool, I say you have to go during Beatle week. And I tell people, if you're Elvis fans, you have to go to Memphis during Elvis week. But all the things that are in Salem are there year round. The Witcher's Museum, the shops, and everything else. So it's a two-sided story. If you want to go and you want to be with 100,000 people, you go during Halloween. But if you want a place to park, if you want to not have to wait for a restaurant for 6 hours to get in, if you want to be able to, get a hotel for $150 instead of $400, you go in November. And then the best reason is because there's a paranormal horror convention there. But, I got to tell Bradford, I'll tell you what I miss. I miss Bleecker Bob's. I miss all those old record stores in the Village that were like lined up. Every other block would have a better one. And in those days, I used to buy Beatles bootlegs, which you couldn't get anywhere else except in the Village. So I just wanted to share that with you as a longtime Village person.
No, I was good friends with guys at 2 different stores where I used to load up on whatever the media of that era. First, I guess records and tapes, and then CDs. So yeah, sure. I hear you.
Bradford, if people don't know about being part of the parade, what advice do you give to people, number one, to be in the parade? And is that something that you deal with personally? And also, for people who have never been to the parade, any advice that you would want to impart for people who are coming for the first time?
Okay, so I can give you some of that information. First thing I recommend, anyone who's interested in the parade, go to the website. It's the Village Halloween Parade if you Google it, and it's I believe the website is halloween-nyc.com. So that will give you all the information on specifics. There are many different ways to participate in the parade, and it will also have information on viewing the parade. There are, the parade costs money to put on. It is a mostly volunteer effort, but to have the number of marshals we need, to support the various puppeteers with grants, because there's some very famous puppeteers involved, Basil Twist, Bread and Puppets, other puppet companies over the years. By the way, interestingly, the puppets don't die. At the end of the year, they go into a barn upstate, and so each year you'll see layers and layers of puppets from previous years that all become part of the parade. But all that effort does cost money. And so there are ways to support the parade through the website. There are ways to get yourself more prime placement if you want to march in the parade. There may be ways to get prime sort of placement viewing the parade as well. But certainly for marching in the parade, anyone who wants to may do so. You would have to go to the rallying point, and that information is available on the website, Village Halloween Parade. And it's an amazing experience to march in the parade. I find that you may not see costumes as many as you would watching the parade until you get out of the parade, at which point, just going out in the village, you'll see all the people that were in the parade just hanging out in the village in their costumes. So if you want an experience of seeing all the different costumes, seeing the Thriller dance, I don't know how much you know about Thriller, but all the folks that, the folks that meet online and very vigorously and seriously study the moves, and then join up at the parade. And sometimes we can have, I would say maybe around 1,000 people doing the Thriller together at once in appropriate costumes. So there are many different ways to participate marching in the parade. There's very many different ways to participate watching the parade. My advice, if you want to see all the different group costumes and performances, probably better off watching. If you want to, if you're willing to put effort into a costume and be part of the entertainment, this is a pretty cool way to get your cool costume seen.
I have a question. You mentioned Thriller, which is a given. Does anyone do Rocky Horror? Does anyone do Phantom of the Paradise? Any of the other cult, music that are related? Nightmare Before Christmas, anything like that?
There's one group that actually does all the Nightmare from Christmas costumes, life size. It's really quite amazing. Some of them, I think the tallest of the group is like 10, 15 feet. Because you can, the different characters are all, in relation to each other. So you can go from like 15 feet down to the different size characters. But there are so many floats and so many different organizations that perform marching bands, everything. It's hard to say specifically whether any of those classics that you mentioned are part of it. I will say that some of my favorite performances that I look forward to each year are the Hungry Marching Band, which is this fabulous sort of Hungarian influenced with the accordion marching band that I guess was formed in the East Village and has kind of migrated to Brooklyn. But all those kids that were in the band at school and got picked on for it, and then became cool and hip in the East Village and cool neighborhoods of Brooklyn now get together and do an amazing performance as the Hungry Marching Band. But then there's some other high schools that perform. There's I want to say some colleges too. I may be imagining this, but I think I saw Princeton's marching band there. There's and they tend to all do thematic Halloween type music when they're going down a thing. You know, we've had famous grand marshals like Gene Simmons and all these other folks. So Cyndi Lauper, you know, many other folks. So sometimes there are things that are sort of themed with you know, whatever music or performance those people are interested in.
Do you have a grand marshal this year?
We do. I believe it is. Hold on, I'm looking at the website now. Not I know it was Lou Reed in spirit, but it was in terms of living grand marshals. I have to. I'm sorry. It was Laurie Anderson in memory of Lou Reed. Okay. So the you know, the famous artist and spouse partner of Lou Reed before he passed away, and musician as well. So she's one of the grand marshals this year. I'm not sure if there's another one. But then, you know, and of course, if there's oftentimes elected officials will come, and there'll be ex officio marshals as well. So yeah, that's that situation.
That's great. So, I mean, you mentioned what you're looking forward to. I mean, are there any obstacles that you feel that you're really concerned about as you look forward to the parade each year?
You know, I'm always thinking about people's safety and wanting people to get together in a loving and celebratory way.
Willing, yes.
You know, this is I want there to be a creative explosion and no other kind.
Yes.
So
Amen.
You know, we make sure that we work. You know, the NYPD is fantastic in terms of their response to this parade over the years. Just the amount of manpower they dedicate to safety, their attitude, individual officers' attitude towards the festivities is just always something that just makes me so happy and really shows you what a wonderful city we're living in, because I think the officers, and we're talking, you know, many thousand of officers, like I can't remember whether it's 3 or 5 but some very large amount of police presence is there. And I think the police officers that get assigned to the parade genuinely enjoy the post. they get a huge kick out of some of the costumes, and they're great sports in terms of things, whether or not they're sometimes you have some very politically expressive costumes, and but whether they're political or funny or whatever the costume is, I think the police really enjoy seeing people's effort. I think the efforts of the sanitation department, cleaning up after everyone, putting the village back together after the parade, are just amazing and appreciated. So really, you know, there in the back of my mind, I always want people to behave peacefully and treat each other well. And I worry about what, incidents could do to, hurt the reputation of the parade. I don't want any individuals to get hurt. And I'm always pleasantly surprised that just the vibe is so positive. And the police and the other city government folks around just do such a good job pulling it off, that I have concerns, but they and I see the potential hurdles, but it's just that it's this creature of love and creativity that just kind of happens, and the I think everyone just kind of goes along for the ride, and we really appreciate the efforts of the city to kind of let it happen that way.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank both of you for being here today. And I want to thank you both for all the efforts that you make. I always say that this show is about celebrating everyone and their body of worth. So I want to thank both of you for what you do to make this Halloween even more exciting for everyone involved. I'm going to give each of you a chance to have your final word today. I'm going to give my final word, and then I will turn it over to you, Bradford. And when you finish, I'll turn it over to you, Charles. And when you finish, all you need to do is say goodbye, and I will end the show. So you don't have to worry about how do I end this. I'll take care of that. But I want everyone to know that all of the links, everything that you see on the show today, and there'll be other links as well, will all be on the YouTube channel. Check them out. Charles has several great books to read. Please go and celebrate all of Charles's events. And Charles, you're where tonight?
I'm going to be in Deep River, Connecticut with my horror book and my ghost stories book.
Great. If you're there, and the wonderful thing about Charles, he has you can go to his website, and again, those links are there, and he will send you an autographed copy of his books. So that's great as well. I end all of my shows by telling everyone to go out and do something nice for somebody else without expecting anything in return. Pick up the phone and call someone that you have not spoken to in a while. Not an email message, not a text message, not a private inbox message, but a phone call. And let that person know the impact that they've made on your life. We spend so much time trying to do this after they've passed away. We've all seen these posts on Facebook with everyone posting pictures and testimonials. And excuse me. And I always say it would be so wonderful if we would take the time to do this while our friends and colleagues are still with us. So take the time to do that. Go to your Facebook friends list, and the third name that pops up, reach out today with a phone call. Charles and Bradford do the same thing. Not an email message, a phone call. I have a dear friend, Sean Moniger, and he says, we're all in the same storm, but we're in different size boats. And I always say, I don't care what size boat you're on, as long as you have a skipper by your side. Now, Bradford, I will be seeing you in person in just a couple of weeks, and I'm looking forward to it. And Charles, I hope to see you in person very soon as well. So on that note, I'm going to leave the screen. And Bradford, I'm turning it over to you. And like I said, when you finish, I'll turn it over to Charles. And it's all yours. Thank you.
Well, you're a tough act to follow. I don't have anything quite as deep to say. What I will say is, please come to the parade, enjoy the parade. It really is, if you've never been, you're in for a treat. It is and not a trick. Hopefully it is a life-changing experience for many, I think. And really, it is a beautiful thing. One thing that you can do if you are interested is go to the Halloween-NYC.com website and learn all about the parade. And you can also just Google Village Halloween Parade. And I'm sure you'll get plenty of, other than the website, I'm sure you'll see plenty of images and videos as a good preview. And I guess that's it. Happy Halloween, and enjoy the parade, and put lots of thought into your costumes, because there will be some amazing ones. And if you wear something lame and store bought without a lot of thought, people will know it. So do a creative, interesting costume.
Well done, Bradford. I have been many years since I've been to the parade, and I look forward to attending someday in the future. If you're in the New York area, definitely go to the parade on Halloween and enjoy the amazing costumes and just the great vibe of it. If you're in New England, though, get ready for November 11th and 12th, and come to the Salem Paranormal Horror Convention at Salem State University, which I'm hosting. It's our second year, and such great guests. Tara Buckman, horror actress from Silent Night, Deadly Night, and from Buck Rogers and Cannonball Run. And we've got the OG mentalist himself, Kreskin, is going to be there. And you know what? It's tough to follow Richard when he ends with such beautiful notes. So I'm going to just say that it's been a pleasure of mine and a joy to not only do the things that I do, whether it's the books, whether it's conventions and tours, or DJing parties, which is my main thing I do, but to bring joy to others, to have a world where the things that bring you joy bring others joy is a blessing. I'm blessed, and I want to extend my blessings to everyone who watches the show and celebrates with Richard. God bless everybody, and thank you for giving me the platform to promote my events and to say hello.